Hezbollah said its fighters were engaging Israeli forces inside Lebanon on Wednesday. Such ground clashes would be the first since Israel began pushing into its northern neighbour in a campaign against the Iran-backed group. This video, released by Israel's military, purports to show its troops in southern Lebanon. Reuters was not able to independently verify the location or the date when the video was filmed. The IDF said regular infantry and armoured units were joining its ground operations in Lebanon. That's a day after Israel was attacked by Iran, prompting fears of a wider conflict in the Middle East. Iran said the attack, its biggest on Israel, was overbarring further provocation, but Israel and the United States have promised to hit back. The violence, meanwhile, continued on the Israeli-Lebanon border. Displaced people like Ada have been flocking to this shelter in the southern Lebanese city, Sidon.
God willing, Hezbollah will be victorious. The land is precious. What can we do? It is now soaked in blood. May God give them victory.
Hezbollah said it was clashing with Israeli troops in the border town of Maroun El Ras. That's after it said pushing back forces near other border towns. Hezbollah also said it had fired rockets at military posts inside Israel. The group's media chief said those battles were only, quote, the first round, and that it had enough fighters, weapons and ammunition to push Israel back. There was no immediate comment from Israel. However, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant visited troops near the border on Wednesday. He said those who harm Israel will, quote, pay the price. The Israeli military has said its incursion is largely aimed at destroying tunnels and other infrastructure on the border. It has also said there were no plans for a wider operation targeting Beirut or other major cities in southern Lebanon. Nearly 1,900 people have been killed and more than 9,000 wounded in Lebanon in almost a year of cross-border fighting, with most of the deaths occurring in the past 2 weeks, according to Lebanese government statistics. More than 1 million people have been forced to flee their homes.
Tens of thousands of people in North Carolina did not have running water on Wednesday. It's been 6 days since Hurricane Helene carved a path through the U.S. South, killing scores of people. Now, residents of hard-hit Asheville have been warned to expect dry faucets for days or even weeks while pipes are repaired. Search and rescue teams have been helping to deliver water and comb through wreckage for the missing. Paul Tarter is the leader of the federal FEMA team at Texas A&M Task Force 1.
This is obviously a major disaster. It really affects everybody here, especially the locals that are impacted. It's beyond anything I've ever seen.
Survivors in the town of Canton, west of Asheville, have been left to pick up the pieces of lives ruined. Martika Stansel and her family are taking stock of what's left.
That was my son's room. He lost everything. Everything below the waist was a loss. We have got to rebuild everything. Our floors are bad. My kids lost everything. We're waiting on FEMA to approve our application to hopefully get a hotel voucher. We're staying at my mom's right now, but like 8 people in a 2-bedroom house. It's super crowded. Yeah, with 4 dogs too.
Ashley Wells, another resident of Canton, says no one there expected how bad Helene got.
Well, out of all the floods that have come through here in the 71 and 73 years they've lived here, it never came up past the front step of the house. This one came through the house. So it was unexpected. I mean, we were not told it was going to be worse than Fred. Fred was like the disaster here. So really nobody was that prepared. We haven't seen FEMA, we haven't seen Red Cross, we haven't seen Hearts with Hands, we've seen no agencies come through here. Most people drive through with their cameras out, filming us like we're animals in a zoo, and don't stop. You've got some nice people that are stopping, but majority, no. We've seen no help through here.
While residents like Wells say they haven't seen assistance, the White House says more than $10 million have been provided directly to those affected by Helene. Wells also said she's wary of leaving behind what she still has.
We could go to the shelter, but I mean, it's like animals don't want to go to the shelter. Why do we? You know, and not to mention the fact that if you get away from your stuff a little bit, people are coming through and picking through it. And I don't know why they want to pick through it, but I mean, they are.
President Joe Biden visited the state Wednesday to survey from a helicopter its washed-out roads, smashed bridges, and downed power lines. He said earlier this week he may ask Congress to return to Washington to pass supplemental funding for aid. The White House said more than 3,500 federal workers are involved in response efforts in affected states. Former President Donald Trump, a Republican running against Vice President Kamala Harris in this year's presidential election, has falsely claimed that Biden has been unresponsive to the hurricane's destruction. Local officials have denied that allegation.
President Joe Biden traveled to North and South Carolina on Wednesday to see the devastation wrought by Hurricane Helene. From Marine One, Biden surveyed the damage below. Over North Carolina's Asheville, homes were smashed to bits, with some of the worst damage observed near rivers. Many of the people living in the area remained cut off from contact with the outside world, even as the U.S. president passed overhead.
The United States, the nation, has your back.
During an operational briefing, Biden said he had approved requests for federal funds to go to hard-hit states.
Today, I approved the request of Governor Cooper for the federal government to cover 100% of all the costs for debris removal, emergency protective measures for 6 months, all the costs.
Biden directed up to 1,000 active duty troops to help with response and recovery efforts. And almost 6,000 members of the National Guard have been deployed across 6 states affected by the storm. Drone video posted on social media by Florida Congresswoman Kat Cammack showed gutted homes and scattered debris. Hurricane Helene slammed into the state on September 26th as a powerful Category 4 hurricane, before tearing a destructive path through southeastern states for several days. As of Wednesday, the hurricane had killed at least 160 people, but the White House said the number of storm-related deaths could go
Claudia
much higher.
Sheinbaum is Mexico's new president, becoming the first woman to hold the title after being sworn in during a boisterous ceremony on Tuesday. The 62-year-old will hold the title for a single 6-year term.
Soy madre, abuela.
I am a mother, grandmother, scientist, and a woman of faith, and as of today, by the will of the people of Mexico, the constitutional president of the United Mexican States.
Sheinbaum is a trained physicist and Mexico City's former mayor. Until she stepped down as mayor, she was known as a data-driven manager, winning approval for reducing the megacity's homicide rate by half by boosting spending on an expanded police force. She's a loyal ally of former leftist President Andrés Manuel López Obrador and has promised, quote, continuity with change, saying she'll build on her mentor's social programs. Sheinbaum has vowed to bolster women's rights and ensure Latin America's #2 economy remains a secure destination for international investment. She used her first speech to address investors over a sweeping judicial reform pushed by López Obrador.
Promoveremos la inversión pública.
We will promote public investment and private investment. I say this very clearly. Rest assured that the investments of domestic and foreign shareholders will be safe in our country.
Her pledges range from expanding public health care and education to building 1 million new homes, capping prices for key goods, and sending Congress a package of reforms to battle gender violence and discrimination. Experts say Mexico's economy will require a tax reform to increase revenues, though Sheinbaum has ruled out a sweeping tax overhaul for now. Her government's first budget is expected to be highly scrutinized for clues on whether she'll make good on commitments to reduce the fiscal deficit to 3.5% of GDP.
A Singapore court sentenced a former minister to 12 months in prison in the sort of corruption case the city-state rarely sees. Subramaniam Iswaran, a cabinet member for 13 years, pleaded guilty to 4 counts of improperly receiving gifts worth more than $300,000 and 1 count of obstructing justice. The sentence was harsher than the 6 to 7 months requested by the prosecution. However, the judge deemed the shorter span manifestly inadequate, given the seriousness of his offenses and their impact on public trust. The case has shocked Singapore, which prides itself on having an efficient bureaucracy with strong and clean governance. Iswaran faces allegations that he accepted lavish gifts from businessmen while serving as transport minister. They include tickets from Singapore's Formula One Grand Prix, English Premier League matches, London musicals, and a private jet ride. He's also accused of taking kickbacks from property tycoon Ong Beng Seng, who holds the rights to the Grand Prix. Ong has not been charged and hasn't commented on the allegations. The Attorney General's chambers said he will decide soon whether to take action against him. Iswaran had served as an advisor to the Grand Prix Steering Committee. He initially claimed innocence but pleaded guilty last week to 5 charges, 2 of which were originally corruption-related, but changed to receiving gifts as public servant. The Attorney General's chamber said they made amendments due to the litigation risk of proving the corruption charges beyond a reasonable doubt. The court said he can remain on bail for a few days and will start his jail term on Monday. Singapore was ranked among the world's top 5 least corrupt countries last year by Transparency International. The last corruption case involving a Singaporean minister was in 1986, when the National Development Minister was investigated for alleged bribery but died before any charges were filed.
These fishermen in Lebanon's Sidon leave for work with no idea whether they'll make it home. Israeli strikes continue to target the southern Lebanese city, but not going to work is not an option.
We are particularly scared of this battleship. They were hitting the port. But we are unable to stop working. Each one of us has 4 or 5 children.
Displaced people have been flocking to shelter in Sidon, says fisherman Hassan Shaban.
Every house has around 10 to 15 families. All the displaced are now in the old town of Sidon. It's packed. All the families from Tyre and from here and there. Everyone is here in Old Sidon. But what can we do? We need to be able to live. We are working while they are striking. Yesterday night was very intense.
More than 1,900 people have been killed and over 9,000 wounded in Lebanon in almost a year of cross-border fighting. Most of the deaths occurred in the past 2 weeks, according to Lebanese government statistics. Caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati said about 1.2 million Lebanese had been displaced by Israeli attacks.
Oil prices rose on Thursday as markets worried about a potential widening conflict in the Middle East. They fear further tensions could disrupt crude oil flows from the key exporting region. Both Brent and US West Texas Intermediate crude benchmarks were up more than $1 or over 1%. Israel bombed central Beirut early Thursday, killing at least 6 people. Its forces saw their deadliest day on the Lebanese front in a year of clashes against Iran-backed armed group Hezbollah. The strike on Beirut happened a day after Iran fired more than 180 ballistic missiles at Israel in an escalation of hostilities. One leading analyst warned investors will look out for any upcoming Israeli response. They added the question for oil now is whether Iran's energy infrastructure will be in Israel's sights. The Middle East tensions overshadowed a stronger global supply outlook. US officials said crude inventories rose by 3.9 million barrels to 417 million barrels in the week ended September 27th, well above forecasts. One analyst said growing US inventories added to evidence the market is well supplied and can withstand any disruptions.
It looks like a secret underground cavern from the set of a movie, but it's actually a facility designed to keep Tokyo from flooding. It is one part of a growing system to ensure the expected increase in rainfall doesn't overcome the Japanese capital. Helping to oversee the expansion of this underground system is Shuno Tomo.
As the climate changes, these kinds of rains are expected to become more and more frequent. And to have even greater impact, we intend to strengthen the provisions of these facilities in order to ensure the safety and security of the people of Tokyo.
59 massive pillars that are 59 feet high and weigh 500 tons each make up what is known as the underground chamber here north of Tokyo. It has enough volume to fit almost 100 Olympic-sized swimming pools of water. When nearby rivers flood, the overflow courses through nearly 4 miles of massive underground tunnels before collecting here in what is officially known as the Metropolitan Outer Area Underground Discharge Channel. Facilities like this one help protect Tokyo from a changing climate, being tracked by Tokyo University Professor of Environmental Science and Climate Risk, Seita Emori.
We are now in a long-term warming trend. So we anticipate that previously unseen record amounts of rain will fall as the temperature rises in the future.
The summer of 2024 was the hottest since records began in 1898, Japan's weather agency said in September. In Tokyo, sudden violent storms known as gorilla downpours have become increasingly common. Tokyo's flood defenses went into action on August 30th as security cameras captured water pouring into the underground cathedral as a typhoon lashed southwest Japan nearly 400 miles away. The system kicked in 4 times in June, more than all of last year. During Typhoon Shanshan, it captured enough water to fill the Tokyo Dome baseball stadium almost 4 times before pumping it safely into the Edogawa River and out to sea. Work is also underway using a colossal tunneling machine to ground a path through the earth below Tokyo. The aim is to capture vast quantities of rain that might otherwise flood the streets above.
U.S. stocks ended little changed on Wednesday as investors monitored the intensifying conflict in the Middle East. The Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ all ticked up marginally, pairing early morning losses after data showed that private payrolls increased more than expected in September. Brad Bernstein is managing director at UBS Private Wealth Management.
I think the fact that employment is showing to be a little better than expected, with wage growth starting to slow or continue to slow, I think is kind of a Goldilocks employment number this morning, in that it supports the Fed being able to continue to cut rates because inflation is dropping. However, the economy is still good, and that type of data implies that we're not seeing an imminent recession, which is a great setup for markets, which is why we're slightly higher today, despite the geopolitical risks that are going on right now.
The focus now turns to Thursday's jobless claims data, followed by Friday's key non-farm payrolls report. Notable stock moves included NVIDIA, which rose more than 1.5%. Shares of Tesla fell 3.5% after the electric car maker reported third-quarter vehicle deliveries below estimates. Shares of Nike slumped after the athletic footwear and apparel maker withdrew its annual revenue forecast just as a new chief executive is set to take charge. And shares of Humana plunged after the health insurer said it expected enrollment in its top-rated Medicare Advantage plans for those aged 65 and above to decrease for 2025.
Japanese stocks jumped Thursday, lifted by comments from the country's new prime minister. The benchmark Nikkei index closed around 2% higher. That's after Shigeru Ishiba said this was no time for more rate hikes. The new leader, in the job since Tuesday, made the comments after meeting with the Bank of Japan governor. Analysts say it seemed to be a bid to shake off his reputation as a monetary hawk. The yen sank following the news as traders scaled back their bets on more rate increases. That's good news for Japanese equities, with a weaker currency making them cheaper for foreigners to buy. A sliding yen also boosts the country's exporters as it raises the value of their overseas earnings. Thursday saw chipgear maker Advantest among the top gainers, rising close to 5%. Sony and Toyota both gained over 1%. Earlier in the week, Ishiba had said he would beef up taxation on investment income and said there was room for higher corporate taxes. However, he has since appeared to backpedal his focus on fiscal discipline. He has made pulling out of deflation the top priority, including by boosting real wages. Ishiba has told the cabinet to draw up measures to help households with rising living costs. Toyota is putting back plans to make electric vehicles in the US. That's according to reports by Japan's Nikkei newspaper. It says output now won't start there until the first half of 2026, instead of late next year. The company spokesman later said that early 2026 was now likely. The Japanese auto giant plans to make electric SUVs at a plant in Kentucky. It has invested some $1.3 billion in the facility to prepare for production. It's all part of moves to introduce 5 to 7 battery electric models in the country over the next 2 years. Reuters sources have previously said that supply disruptions and corporate governance issues were likely to delay the start of production. EV sales have seen a slowdown worldwide, partly due to diverging policies on support for purchases of the zero-emission vehicles. The Nikkei says Toyota has also abandoned plans to make Lexus-branded EVs in North America by 2030. It says the firm will instead ship the premium cars from Japan.
Tesla shares fell more than 6% in Wednesday morning trading and were on track to erase nearly all their gains for the year, after the world's most valuable automaker missed expectations for third-quarter deliveries. The EV maker handed over nearly 463,000 vehicles, more than the prior quarter, but about 7,000 shy of what Wall Street was expecting. The company now has to deliver a record number of vehicles in the fourth quarter, about 516,000, to match last year's delivery number of roughly 1.8 million vehicles. A shortfall could result in Tesla recording its first ever annual drop in deliveries. Elon Musk's EV maker is contending with rising global competition, most notably in China, where automakers BYD and XPeng are aggressively expanding their presence in the world's largest automotive market, thanks to help from government subsidies. And in July, BMW eclipsed Tesla as the top-selling EV maker in Europe. As a result, Tesla has offered price cuts and incentives, but those have squeezed profit margins. The company is expected to unveil its robo-taxi product at a closely watched event on October 10th in Los Angeles, as it attempts a shift in strategy with a focus on AI-powered autonomous technologies.
OpenAI has closed its latest fundraising round, raking in $6.6 billion from investors. That values the ChatGPT maker at around $157 billion. Cementing its status as one of the world's most valuable private companies. Top corporate backer Microsoft was among those to put money in. AI chip champion Nvidia also contributed, as did Japanese investment giant SoftBank. But Apple did not, despite recent reports that it would. It all comes amid restructuring efforts and a series of executive departures. That includes last week's exit of Chief Technology Officer Mira Murati, long one of the firm's most prominent faces. None of that seems to have worried investors, who are excited by OpenAI's growth projections. Reuters sources say boss Sam Altman projects revenues of $3.6 billion this year, and then about 3 times that amount next year. He's expected to gain a big slice of equity in the startup as part of the restructuring. The fundraising round may also have included steps to protect OpenAI's advantage over competitors. Sources say investors were asked not to put money into 5 rival outfits. Among those on the banned list were Amazon-backed Anthropic and xAI, founded by Tesla billionaire Elon Musk. There was no comment on that report from any of the companies concerned.
Peacekeepers remain in position and the UN flag continues to fly despite Israel's request to relocate, as I did in relation to the Iranian attack in April. And as should have been obvious yesterday, in the context of the condemnation I expressed, I again strongly condemn yesterday's massive missile attack by Iran on Israel. It's high time to stop the sickening cycle of escalation after escalation that is leading the people of the Middle East straight over the cliff. Each escalation has served as a pretext for the next. We must never lose sight of the tremendous toll this growing conflict is taking on civilians. And we cannot look away from systematic violations of international humanitarian law. This deadly cycle of tit-for-tat violence must stop.
Sí, honestamente he visto muchos lugares donde ya está la Navidad totalmente puesta y honestamente me genera un poquito de incertidumbre porque es que necesito procesar que primero viene Halloween, otras festividades antes de Navidad, siento que es muy antes y también siento que es una forma como de distraernos un poco de todo lo que está pasando y sencillamente es darnos como motivo de celebración.
¡No faltan el respeto!
Chicos, ¿cómo es posible que van a gastar ese dineral en cuestiones de Navidad y que vamos a celebrar? Nosotros, por lo menos, ¿qué voy a celebrar yo? Yo ni siquiera, yo no sé si voy a hacer ya que este año, porque no me alcanza, pues, no sé, yo. No,
this is the station I use every day. I've been here like 20 minutes before the terrorist attack. I was about to go to sleep, and then I heard the gunshots. I was absolutely terrified. We are used to a bit of pistols, something like light, but yesterday was horrifying. Then we got the sirens.
In the middle of missile attacks and terrorist attacks. I live 50 meters away from here, and the feeling is just like there's no security in this place. Like anything can happen. I'm not frightened. I mostly feel like it's just shocking and overwhelming, and there's really nothing we can do about it.
Ursula and I have agreed that we can do more together in a few key areas in particular: promoting growth and prosperity, working together on shared challenges like climate change, energy security, and illegal migration, and strengthening our shared security and stability. So we're putting our relationship with Europe on a more solid, stable footing. There will be no return to freedom of movement, no return to the customs union, no return to the single market. But we will find constructive ways to work together and deliver for the British people.